Hey guys, Team Stamp Wes, and we are here for my Spring 2020 in the bag, and we are going to see what is in my bag right now. We're going to start with my putting putters. I have been testing out the Roach a lot over the last fall and winter, but after getting these back out, I just feel so much more comfortable with these. This is the Jawbreaker Cali SS, just a very straight, glidey putting putter, likes to finish straight, likes to glide straight. Just a really, really good beadless neutral putting putter. Next up, we of course have one of my favorite discs ever, the ZZone. I use these pretty much for every approach shot. Little touch forehands, hyzer backhands, flat backhands. The ZZone is my go-to for approach discs. It's really squishy. As you can see, it really likes to stick where it lands, whether it's gliding in, coming in on a hyzer, or landing flat. Just really, really good point and shoot, stable approach disc. We'll continue on with my putters, throwing putters. For my neutral throwing putter, I have the MJ ESP Banger GT. I really like these for just straight shots off the tee or something that I need to hyzer just a little. You can put some hyzer on these and they'll just kind of soft glide into the green and sort of stall out. Obviously MJ's a huge fan of these. I think this is a really good neutral throwing putter when you need something to still put some power on, but to really go straight off the tee. And then I have my ZZone, and this is primarily my forehand disc off the tee, or if I need to throw a power forehand approach shot. ZZone, obviously very overstable, nice flat top, and I really love these for my forehand shots. So we carry on with my mid-ranges, which are pretty simple right now. First up, we have the Die Meteor. I really liked the fly die because it was a little bit more stable in the Meteor for me. And I'm really excited to get a Vanessa Van Dyken 2020 Tour Series Meteor. As soon as I get one of those, that will replace this, but the Z Fly Die Tour Series Meteor is definitely going to be my very straight to understable mid. I really like this because I can power down, to like 75% and throw these on just a little hyzer to flat, and they just glide really nice and just really err on the side of going straight, which I really love. Next up, we have my favorite, maybe second favorite with the ZZone, but super close, the Z Wasp. This is an old one. This is from 2008. And this has actually been in my bag for as long as I've been playing. The Z Wasp, I throw this a lot where people throw their buzzes because this is so old and beat up. Just very straight. I can throw this super hard flat and it just goes flat. The Z Wasp, I think, is a disc that should be in every player's bag, beginner to professional. Really love the Z Wasp. And then last up, a little bit of an oddball one, the Jawbreaker Buzz OS. I actually like the Jawbreaker plastic for these because usually if I'm throwing a Buzz OS, I'm throwing it hard. So the Jawbreaker gives me a little more grip, a little more pop on my throws, and it's also a little bit less stable than maybe the Z Buzz OS was, which really wants to get into its hyzer. But I like throwing the Buzz OS for something that I need to throw hard and have a hyzer finish, but still have kind of a straight mid-flight, sort of like you would expect from a mid-range. Next up, we will go with my fairways, which are a big chunk of my bag. The first one is a Z Stalker. The Z Stalker is my straight to, if I need to put a slight anhyzer on something. I really like the Z Stalker off the tee, just hyzer flip to flat. It just loves to go straight. I'm looking forward to the Haley King Tour Series Stalkers as well. One of those might replace this one when I get my hands on one. So I'm super excited about that, but Z Stalker. Next up, we have the Z Heat. The Heat is definitely my hyzer flip to understable disc. If I need to throw something on a roller, if I get in a weird spot, I'll grab a Z Heat. These have sneaky good glide. There's been a lot of days where if I'm throwing with a little tailwind, I'll throw the Z Heat as my primary driver. These things go really far. They're sneaky fast, sneaky glidey, and I think probably the best driver for beginner and mid-level players to grab as a primary driver, Z Heat. Next up, we have two Undertakers. We have an ESP Undertaker, and then I have one of these Glow Ledgestone Z Undertakers. The ESP one is a little less stable. I can put a little hyzer, this will flip and get a nice, real tight S-flight. So if I'm throwing through the woods or throwing a wooded course, I throw the ESP Undertaker a ton. And this one is kind of for my sort of mid-power forehands if I need something to go straight, or if I need a little more stable Undertaker, something that's going to fly flat or hold a hyzer and have a hyzer finish. These glow Undertakers were a little bit more stable, so I like them for that shot. And then we have a Test Flight, Paw Macbeth Onyx. I was throwing the Vulture for a long time, and I would throw it for stable but still glidey fairway shots, and then the Onyx came out, and I just preferred the Onyx a little bit more to the Vulture. I think they're very similar, but I think the Onyx liked to err on the side of being stable a little bit more, which I liked. The Vulture would sometimes flip up and maybe just have a tight flight, but these will just flip to flat and they do not want to turn over. Also a really good forehand disc for, 90% power forehands when you need to get something flat and have a hyzer finish. And then last up is the beef in my fairway lineup. This is an ESP Raptor, and this was actually from the Memorial in 2019 when I was out there, and this was actually the first Raptor that I really threw in the bag and started working with, so it's just kind of stuck in the bag. The ESP ones seem to be kind of mid-stable as far as Raptors go. I'll throw this a ton for forehands if I need to get a big hyzer, and I'll throw this a ton for backhands, especially if there's wind for stuff that I need to go straight and fade hard, or something that I need to spike hyzer in. Raptor's a very overstable mold. I like the ESP plastic, similar to my Jawbreaker Buzz OS. I'm usually throwing these hard when I'm throwing them, so I like the extra grip with the ESP. Last, we'll get into my drivers. First one is my least stable driver. This is a Z crank, but this one's really flippy. Shout out to Nathan Skinner, the skinny crank, I call this one. I can really hyzer flip this one up and it'll ride out. It does not have very much fight back at the end, so understable crank. And then I have one more crank. This is my stable crank, which I call my Crank OS. This thing's a hog. For some reason, it's just very flat, kind of a pearly Z. I can throw this thing full power flat, and it just stays flat the entire way. So if I need to throw a drive and know that it's not going to fade out on me and just going to go straight at full power, this Crank OS, as I call it, or Z crank, is what I'll grab for. And then new additions to my bag is the Paw Macbeth Hades. This has quickly become my go-to driver. You can put a little hyzer on these. They stand up to flat. They have a really nice tight S-flight, and they like to fade forward at the end, which I really like. You get an extra maybe 10 or 20 feet out of a disc that likes to finish forward versus hyzering out. So the Paw Macbeth Hades has been a perfect addition to my bag for kind of a mid-power player, somebody who's throwing just under 400 or around that 400 mark. And I would definitely recommend these discs for any mid-level players that are looking for a high-speed, full-power driver, especially something that you can hyzer flip a little bit and still get a nice full flight out of. The last two discs are the two most stable discs in my driver lineup. This is a 2017 Big Z Heat. This thing's pretty beat in. I've had this in my bag since 2017. This was my main go-to driver before I started bagging the Hades. If there's any sort of a headwind, I'll still throw this force. I should put one more, there we go. I'll still throw this force because it wants to err on the side of stable versus the Hades wants to flip up and maybe have that little S-flight. And if there's a headwind, it might fight out late. So if there's any sort of headwind, this is usually my go-to driver. And the last two discs are primarily forehand discs for me, or when I really need some beef. This is a really beat up Z-Force. This thing's been in my bag a ton. It's pretty domey. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but I primarily use this for my full power forehand shots. If I need to throw a forehand, somewhere in the 350 plus range, this domey Z-Force is my go-to. And I like that these are a little bit more domey. I like the domey Z versus the flatter ESP because I feel like the domey is a little bit more forgiving on forehands. So if I turn something over a little bit, it kind of wants to fight back to flat. And if I put hyzer on it, it still seems to want to pop up to flat. So domey Z-Force, my go-to for forehand discs. And last disc in my bag is a Z Machete. These things are beef. If you encounter any 30, 40 mile per hour winds, something super crazy that no other disc can handle, highly recommend the Z Machete. You can see these are very flat, have a blunt edge here, and for me are just basically like a faster Raptor. I'll throw these a ton for thumbers, tomahawks, like I said, into steep headwinds, or if I need to do some shot shaping through the woods or get around a tree or something. It's just a great utility disc and has a lot of use. So that's everything for my 2020 spring in the bag. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe, guys, and be sure to make that putt.